जब अप्लाई हो गया. Good morning, friends. Today's topic is the Indian Constitution. Dear friends, on 26 January 1950, the Indian Constitution came into existence. It has its long historic background. Before 26 January 1950, India was run and governed by the different acts passed by the British Parliament. On the pillars of those acts, the Constituent Assembly has framed the present Constitution of India. Dear friends, from 1757 to 1857, there was the rule of East India Company, and during the rule of East India Company, the first written act which was applicable to India was passed in the year 1773. The Regulating Act, which was followed by the second act, Pitt's India Act, passed in 1784. And after that, there were 4 charter acts passed after an equal interval of 20 years. The Charter Act 1793, 1813, 1833, and 1853. Those were the 6 major acts passed by the British Parliament during the rule of East India Company. After the revolt of 1857, in the year 1858, the power was snatched from the hands of the East India Company to rule India, and the British administration in India was now directly handed over to the British Crown. So in place of East India Company, the rule of British Crown was established. From 1858 onwards, 7 major acts were passed for governing India. Those acts were called as Indian Council Act of 1858, Indian Council Act 1861, Indian Council Act 1892, Indian Council Act 1909, also called as Morley-Minto reforms. The Indian Council Act 1919, also called as Montagu-Chelmsford Act, and second last but not the least act which governed the administration, British administration in India, was the Government of India Act 1935. This Indian Council Act of 1935, or the Government of India Act 1935, having its approx 70% share in the present day constitution. The last but not the least act passed by the British Parliament which governed India was the Indian Independence Act 1947. Dear friends, after the Second World War, the global scenario changed. The world became bipolar. All the imperialist power, they came under pressure to liberate the different Asian, African, and Latin American countries which were ruled by European imperialist powers. And ultimately, the process of declaring independence for these colonies started at faster pace. Accordingly, India got independent on 15th August 1947. In 1946, the British Parliament, on the recommendation of Cabinet Mission Plan, the British government agreed upon to make a constituent assembly for India. And on 9th December 1946, the Constituent Assembly came into existence. The basic purpose of this Constituent Assembly was to frame the Constitution of India. From 9th December 1946 till 26 November 1949, when finally the Constitution was drafted. The Constituent Assembly took 2 years, 11 months, 18 days to finally frame the Constitution of India. Some of the aspects of newly framed Constitution, like election, citizenship, etc., were adopted and implemented on 26 November 1949, but the Constitution as a whole was adopted on 26 January 1950, and therefore India became republic. So this present Constitution, which we have, is basically based on the pillars of those 7 articles, and some of the elements of those articles are mentioned in different nook and corner of the Constitution of India. In my next class, I will start with the salient features of all those acts, and then how the Constituent Assembly came into existence and how the different committees of the Constituent Assembly framed the Constitution of India, and what were the different good points the Constituent Assembly adopted from the different constitution of the world. This I will discuss in the next class. Thank you.